with the Somerset K through 8 school committee, and it was to discuss school safety. And Jess Machado told me that she and other parents were shocked to learn just how unsafe conditions are at some of the town schools. She says, and I quote, "Parents, volunteers, and teachers shared stories of unsecured doors, point of entry concern, 20-year-old emergency manuals, and more. Perhaps more shocking than the testimonials of these people was the response of the school committee chairman, Victor Machado, who, when asked what the school committee's plan was, responded, 'I have no plan.'" Machado and others are insisting that local school districts begin to address societal changes by revisiting school security plans and updating them to meet today's unique threats. Those plans must include armed security. Jess Machado and Jocelyn Dominguez, thanks for coming in. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Barry.
So, you guys went to this meeting fully expecting, I guess, to hear a plan from the school officials about what they're doing to address this threat of school safety. And well, the chairman said, "We have no plan." Jess, what was your reaction to that?
I think it was pretty shocking. I mean, I think, we all went there as kind of a reaction to the recent Florida school shooting. So as parents, not as school committee members, not as officials, as parents, dealing with the feelings of sending our children to school and wondering, is today the day? Are our children safe? So I think we went there from a very personal intent to say, we're concerned personally. Are we doing enough? Are we doing more? Did I think that we were going to hear that we have no plan? No, I think that was pretty shocking. And I didn't really hear anything else from any of the members of the committee of things that were in place or things that they were planning on putting in place. It kind of felt like a very unique starting point for this process, because when you hear someone say we don't have a plan, we're wondering, well, okay, can we get one? What are we going to do?
Right. So, Jocelyn, your thoughts on, first of all, we don't have a plan. And second of all, do you think there's like a false sense of security, as I mentioned? I believe there is. Parents go to the schools, they have to buzz the buzzer to get in, and somebody has to let them in. And you have the doors inside the building that can only be opened from the inside. Does that create, do you think, a sense of false security? In other words, were you secure prior to all of this happening? Did you think the schools were safe?
I did. I guess I could blame myself for my own ignorance, but I did think that was something that was at the forefront of their thinking. And also, to answer the first part of your question, when he gave us that answer as to, I don't know or nothing, in my mind, Barry, Sandy Hook was 2012. We're talking 6, now 7 proposed school budgets with security and safety. I don't even know if that was prevalent in any of those budgets. So now, honestly, that was my very first. I had never been to a school committee meeting. I just went as a parent going, okay, what are they going to be discussing and what do they have in place to make sure this doesn't happen again? Because with Parkland, Florida, I think the reason that so many of us parents are awake now is because, the FBI failed, the police failed, the teachers, the friends, if that gentleman had any friends. Everybody was notified that there was something wrong. And now us as parents, we're sitting here going, okay, well, if the people that we think are going to be keeping them secure are not, then it's our job to step up as parents, get our voices out there and, change things. So.
Why, Jess, has it taken all of this time? I mean, school shootings are not something new. This has been going on since Columbine, 2 decades ago. Why is it all of a sudden now we're talking about securing schools?
For me personally, I thought when Sandy Hook happened, that changed how I felt, but the Florida shooting changed how I acted. So correct. I think we all had that underlying feeling after Sandy Hook, which, by the way, the school class teacher that was at our meeting, she identified that right after Sandy Hook, she compiled a group of teachers to come together and address security concerns at that time. So, great bravo to that teacher who said, yes. Right after that, we need to start doing something. I had just said I was at the school committee last year talking about something not related. Why did I not put my energy and effort into this particular topic? I think it falls under the narrative of false security.
Yeah.
Yes, as a parent, I worry, but I had a lot of faith in the department that, everything was being done. And I'm not here to knock the department. I think it's a really great starting point. Yeah. And I don't think anybody should overlook that parents are concerned and we want some changes. They need to embrace that. That's how we're feeling. They need to address these issues that are being brought up, which are, bare minimum, doors need to be able to lock, things like that. So these things need to get addressed. I think the group of parents that went to this meeting, they were looking for higher security measures, whether it was teachers being armed, and I believe that was how the conversation started.
That's what we wanted. Yeah.
But I think everything's about compromise. I think that getting everybody to be on board with that is going to be a challenge. So I think the compromise would be, can we do something more? Can we get some police officers at each one of these schools? What can we do? So something needs to be done. I mean, I know a lot of people are saying, there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions going on here, but it got people to listen.
Finally.
It got some police officers at the school the day after the meeting. It got some people to start this committee. We've got people that are moving. So I think that, there's a positive that's coming out of it. But there's a lot, in my opinion, as a parent, there's a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done.
Yep.
Jocelyn, let me ask you, because the same question I just asked to Jess, and that is why, I mean, after all of these years, did this incident in Parkland, Florida, make us start thinking about security at schools? I mean, every time there's been a school shooting, we talk about banning guns, we talk about all of that kind of thing, but nobody ever really talked about...
I think it was the negligence, honestly, Barry. It was the negligence of Parkland. You see this on the news. You see afterthoughts of, what could we have done better? But to me, I really just feel like like most of the people out there listening right now, they're sitting there going, is my kid safe? And how are they making sure that they are safe? And I just feel like this time, and I don't know, I can't pinpoint exactly what it was with Parkland.
I can, actually.
But it's, what
I
is
don't
it?
mean to
No,
interrupt
go ahead,
Jocelyn,
Jess,
but
of course.
Sandy Hook happened, and I think when we heard the narrative from that situation, we were imagining things that were happening. Yeah. For the Parkland shooting, there was actual video of students in the classrooms right after the incident had occurred. And I watched them. I inadvertently clicked on a link that showed me
accidentally, yes.
A student's video, and I put my daughter in that exact position. The classroom looked just like the classrooms at the high school. The kids they were the same age as my oldest daughter. And for me, it was one of those things where you can't unring that bell. You saw it. And I think for me to be able to see it, and I think that was for me, wow, like this is real. And I think a lot of people have been able to see. So I don't know if everybody agrees, but for me, being able to see, a student on the floor, dead, shot, to see the panic of these kids trying to leave the classroom, gut-wrenching and made me panic, so what can we do? So for me, that was it, being able to see that. It
seemed as though lights went on a lot of heads after this, and people said, wait a minute.
A lot of alarms went off.
We'll deal with the gun thing, we can deal with the mental health issue, but immediately we need to address school safety.
Correct.
And so that, I guess, is where we're at this point. We're speaking with Jess Machado and Jocelyn Dominguez. Both are residents of Somerset, and they went to a school committee meeting recently for the Somerset K through 8. To have a discussion about school safety, and we're shocked to hear the school committee chairman say, I have no plan. And as we've talked about here a number of times, I think there is a false sense of security, because parents drop their kids off at school in the morning, and you have the doors, if you want to go and visit the school, that you have to be buzzed in. You have security cameras, you have various things like that, and I think people just assume those are safe buildings, and we're finding out that that's not necessarily the case. Do both of you ladies support arming teachers?
Absolutely. If they so do decide that they want to do that, yeah.
Okay. What about you, Jess?
I'm a little realistic when it comes to that. I think getting overall the majority of support for that would be very difficult. Yeah. So yes, I think anybody who has an LTC who is a responsible gun owner should be able to protect themselves. And personally, I'd love to have a teacher in my child's classroom that's armed. I do. I think it could make the difference. However, I mean, I'm realistic. I'd like to have one guy at the door that has one at the very least.
Right.
Well, we know that's not going to happen, but hardening the outside, we wouldn't even have to worry about, making sure the teachers are armed. They wouldn't even be able to get in. So,
Well, when I talk about this for the audience, folks will call in and they'll say, well, this school in Florida had, what, 4?
did they really?
They had 4
I thought
guards?
they only had 1.
Well, they had the one that we all knew about, Peterson, that didn't go in, but apparently there
Yeah.
were 3 other sheriff's deputies somewhere on the property, and they didn't enter either. So when you talk about putting a security guard on the outside, President Trump even said, well, you know, a guy on the outside doesn't love the students like a teacher would.
Right.
And a teacher would, as we've seen, put his or her own body on the line to protect those students. So that's why he's advocating for arming teachers. But you don't think this would be an easy sell in Somerset, either of you?
I don't think it'd be an easy sell, although the feedback that we've received from some teachers is that they would.
Anonymously, Barry.
I just feel
Anonymously, yeah.
Oh, anonymously.
Because that's what I hear
Correct.
from the teachers.
They
unions.
want to
We don't-
speak
we
up,
don't
but
wanna-
they don't want to lose their job.
Right. Well, we know that hundreds of teachers all across the country are seeking
obviously.
training, because we had there was a group, and I'm going to forget this now, from Ohio, that is actually training teachers. I don't know if you've seen this. It's called a Fairer program, and it's online. It's a group of gun owners in Ohio. They're actually training teachers all across the country. They say they can't keep up with the demand now. And what they teach them is how to, they work with former military people, you know, maybe veterans or police officers or whatever, that are now into teaching, and they have to be willing to do this. We don't want to just train the 70-year-old librarian and give her a
Right.
gun to stick in her
course.
in her holster or whatever. So it's got to be people willing. But they also teach them in medical treatment, emergency medical treatment. So if there is an incident, they know how to react on the scene before the paramedics get there, and crowd control and those kind of things too. So there's a lot of interest, but I think anonymous interest out there. I think if you were to poll teachers in the area, I think you'd probably find more than you would expect.
I've had people reaching out to me, Barry, private messaging me, and they don't want to, they don't want to come forward, but they do commend us. We're trying, and it's not a diss to any police official, even the school committee. It's really not. It comes from, we want our kids safe, and that shouldn't be such a hard sell.
Yeah. Well, I agree, and I think that most of us all across the country hadn't given a whole lot of thought to keeping the schools, or we thought we were keeping them safe, but we didn't.
We thought the buzzer was enough.
Yeah, we didn't think that we needed to take it further than that. Every time there was a shooting, we debate gun control and that kind of thing, and now it's changed. So, did either of you leave this meeting with a sense that something further was going to happen?
Well, I mean, the committee had to address the security issues in an executive session, which is slated to take place during the meeting coming up tomorrow. I do feel that from the feedback I've got from some members of the school committee that they're actively working on putting some sort of a plan in place. My question comes down to, is it going to be enough? I don't want to just placate the parents right now and say, we're going to do this, this, and this. I mean, for me personally, my goal, and I believe the goal of the parents I'm associated with right now, is to get at least one police officer at every school at a bare minimum, have a security group that's specifically addressing these teachers' needs and the needs of the teachers that are in school that they've brought to our attention. So, that needs to be taken care of. And I do believe there's some other residual issues and things that we don't even realize that can be done. At the very bare minimum, can the school committee and the town fund an officer for each school so that parents can have a peace of mind? We have one person specifically focused on safety for that building, because at any given time, we don't have one person specifically focused on the safety of that school. A principal is being pulled in, multiple different directions throughout the day. The, staff at the schools are, managing phone calls, students coming in and out, people coming in and out, deliveries coming in and out. We really just would love to have one person at that school that sole focus is school security in all of its forms. So one person accountable for that building, for the security at a bare minimum. I think the funding has to happen. I know it's going to come down to that, and Chief McNeil in Somerset has been asking for more police officers for years, and it hasn't gotten that. And if you make safety paramount for your community, everything kind of falls under that. And I think that they need to give them the funding to hire the police to do this job. I'm also very realistic, like I keep saying. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think we need to look and see, do we have the funding right now? yes, give it to them, tier it out. If we need to do one this year, one next year, one the year after that, so that we have a plan in place. But I mean, why are we going to sit here and say, well, you know, the threat is very minimal. Statistically, it's a very small number that we're going to have this happen to us. Why are we going to risk that? It's a small risk that my house is going to catch on fire, or you know what I mean, or that I'm going to have a break-in. That doesn't mean that.
Well, they said that
in
Parkland too about 4 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have a really great small community, and we have the ability to do a lot right now. I think the school committee and our selectmen need to find a way to work it into the budget so that the chief can get the manpower, and then we can get people in the schools at a minimum. I mean, we have an outdated 20-year crisis manual that has not been updated. You know, this is the kind of thing where people are saying you've got a knee-jerk reaction, but is it really?
Well, what caught my attention about your story was the fact that I'm sure is very similar to most of the communities around here.
Correct.
Most of the communities probably put some kind of a security plan in after the first shooting, maybe after the second shooting.
Right, why do we have to wait till then?
And it hasn't been updated since then.
Correct.
And you know, we see this happening more often. And you're right, it is a minimal threat, but a threat is still a threat. And these are our kids and our teachers. And I mean, I don't personally think that any more teachers need to die protecting kids, and no more kids need to die going to school. I think we should make the investment. New Bedford has resource officers, school resource officers that are armed. There's none of that at all in Somerset at this
What do
point?
we have, Jess?
We have an SRO at the high school.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know, my argument was we've got an SRO at the high school, which is in throwing distance to the police department.
It's in the
They're
same
right
parking
next
lot,
door.
yeah.
And we've got some vulnerable elementary schools that just don't have the security. So we have one, and I believe we have a part-time at the middle school. You know, again, like I said, you know, can we make it happen to have one? And, you know, do I think they need to be in uniform? No. I mean, put them in a polo shirt and some khakis, have them armed, and have them handle all of the day-to-day operations of what's going on at the school, you know.
Well, what I've advocated for is, I mean, I want Rambo on every school. I want him on the roof.
I would
and
love
I want
it,
him up
Barry.
there.
Don't we wish?
And, you know, I want a big sign saying you cross this threshold, you're not coming back out. So, I mean, I want everybody out there to know that school is armed.
Well, I said I work in a bank, and, you know, the banks that have armed guards out front are statistically less apt to be held up than the ones that don't, you know. And I said I like those odds for me when I'm in a branch that has an armed officer out front, and our kids deserve that same thing.
Just
So
that comfort alone.
a deterrent, you know.
That's interesting, though. You work in a bank and you have armed security, but your kids go to school and they're wide open.
Yeah, is the money more important than the children? I don't think so.
508-996-0500 is our phone number. Jess Machado and Jocelyn Dominguez are two parents from Somerset who went to a school committee meeting a couple of weeks ago, or last week maybe? Last week. In Somerset to find out more about what was being done to improve safety and security at the schools in the wake of the Parkland shooting, and found out there is no plan, quote unquote, I have no plan, from the school committee chairman, Victor Machado. And so they are advocating for more security at the schools in Somerset. This is Somerset, but it is very much like Acushnet and Fairhaven and Dartmouth and all the other communities around here who probably have older security plans on the books that haven't been updated in a long time. We've talked a lot about security here on this program, and we've talked a lot about arming teachers. I'd like to get your thoughts for these two young ladies while they're with us, and we're going to take a break. We'll come back in just a couple of moments. Stay with us. You're listening to 1420 WBSM. All right, welcome back. 12:34. It's a Tuesday afternoon. Happy as a clam to be with you as always. We've got a couple of folks in the studio with us. Jess Machado and Jocelyn Dominguez are both parents. They live in Somerset. Went to a school committee meeting last week to talk about security in the wake of the Parkland shooting, and found out from the chairman of the school committee, a gentleman by the name of Victor Machado, who's a great guy. We don't have a plan. There's no plan going forward. And as we've talked about a lot over the last couple of weeks, the focus on all of this now has turned to school safety as opposed to just talking about gun regulations. So they were a little bit surprised by that. And both of these parents support arming teachers if necessary, but they want some armed security at the schools where their kids go to school. And what do you think? 508-996-0500 is the phone number. There are, let me start with Jess on my left over here. Jess, there's a lot of concern from some folks who call me that armed teachers would actually create more problems than they solve, and that they would introduce more guns into the school building and more potential for violence. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I hear these one-off things that could happen. And at the end of the day, what is the risk assessment when it comes to that? And I think that the risks of those things are extremely low, along with the risk of a shooter coming in. But if we have responsible teachers that are willing, so never once would I have ever advocated for a teacher who does not want to carry a gun to have to arm themselves. There's all of these things about where the guns would be kept. And, there's very strict rules and regulations surrounding that. From what I understand, it is up to the administration whether or not this happens. So I'm still looking for clarification on the law surrounding that in Massachusetts, if you can have a teacher who is armed. Personally, I think the risks are low, but again, this is all about putting, preventative measures in place just in case, and dealing with my children. So our kids, why would we not do that if somebody is willing to and responsible and has no criminal record and all of those things check out? Why not?
And you don't, Jocelyn, you don't have a concern about the potential for more violence if there are guns in schools?
No, absolutely
with teachers?
No. Absolutely not.
Do you have metal detectors in any of the schools in Somerset?
No.
Jess, do we?
I don't believe so, no.
No, we don't in New Bedford either. And last week the mayor raised the concern that, well, gee, if we put teachers with guns in the schools, we run the risk of there being more violence because there are more guns in the school. And my question to him, and my question to anybody who has a school without metal detectors, is how do we know students are not bringing in guns currently?
Right.
We don't know that.
Right.
And there's no way to know that because students are not frisked going into buildings.
Right.
Their backpacks are not searched. There's no radar machines. Even with all of that equipment, all of the equipment that you can buy, unless you have somebody with a weapon on the inside, if an armed intruder comes in, I mean...
Look at that coach in Parkland.
Yeah.
What if he had been armed? His chances would have been a little bit better.
And he was licensed to carry, too.
Yeah, he would have been... He might have had a chance to save not only himself, but some of those children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are you guys going to do? I mean, you guys are obviously, you want to keep this going, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, things lose momentum. It's very easy. There's a lot of...
It already has.
It falls by the wayside.
There's
but
a
that's
lot
not
of
happening with
frustration,
us.
as a parent, just a parent, there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of motivation behind every decision that's made, every penny that's spent. I think I'm a novice when it comes to that. I speak for Jocelyn. We don't really know the workings of the government in our town and how
This is my first sit down with...
Yeah. But, it's a bipartisan issue. This affects everybody. It's about general safety and that minimum being met. It's clearly not in place. And I'm taking the word of our school committee chairman who is telling us there is no plan. He doesn't have a plan to address the concerns. It's antiquated. Nothing's being done. So, I mean... we have a meeting coming up. It's tomorrow. I thought today to come on air and try to make our point to tell our selectmen as well as our school committee members directly, please find the funding and give our chief the funding that he needs so that he can hire more men, so that he can put them in our schools, because he may want it, which I think he does. We want it, but the funding needs to come from these elected officials, and they need to put their money into this investment, and I'm hoping that they do. Again, not looking for results overnight, but I think we need to find a way to fund a police officer at each school. That'll satisfy, I think, everybody. Jocelyn really wants teachers armed. I think it's going to cause a lot of friction, and I think we'd lose sight of the goal, which is safety of the kids, if we started talking about that particular issue, even though I believe it. We just have to kind of say, what can we get and what can we do? So I didn't want to focus on that. I wanted to focus on the professionals being at the schools, armed, and then this committee, being made of, elected officials, parents, professionals that can address the issues that, we've thought about, teachers have, that they've been looking, Unfortunately, these teachers are saying that they've been bringing these issues to attention for the past 5 years, and they have not been addressed.
Right.
Simple funding for shades for a classroom door so that the teachers can hide the children without being in plain view of a shooter should they come in. What's the cost behind that? Why haven't we been able to get the funding for those type of simple requests? So those things need to be addressed well. So I'm hoping between the school committee, we get a committee together focused on safety, somebody in charge of that, and then we can have these officers that in the meantime can be that buffer and that deterrent until these all other things get put in place. Because right now, everybody's very vulnerable, even though the risks are low. I get that, but why are we taking that chance?
Well,
Honestly.
again, the risk was low in Parkland too.
You're right.
Until it wasn't anymore, right?
Yeah.
508-996-0500. Let's go to the phones. We have a call for Jess Machado and Jocelyn Dominguez. Let's find out who we got here. You're next on the air on WBSM. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
How you doing, and how are you, ladies?
Hi, how are you?
Commend you on your effort.
Thank you.
But I think the first thing that I would do, other than going with police, I would go with private security, which is, qualified, armed, and well-trained, not just, your standard security. I would go, like, really good security. I would put that out there so it could go out for bid. It'll keep it competitive. And you'll also keep the unions out of it, because if you put the police in there, now you've got the police union to work with, and you have no control over the cost. At least if you go with a private contractor,
Bidding war.
you have a bidding process, and you also can pick and choose who you want in there, and you can also terminate their contract.
Well, I think that would ultimately be up to the town. I don't think either one of these ladies want to micromanage this at all. They just want the school department to provide the security. So the security team or whatever action the school committee wanted to choose, that would be up to them to do.
But I understand that. But going down the line and going forward, looking beyond, the edge of this, just starting it, is, how hard it is to just the teachers' union's a horror show to deal with. Never mind a police union. So, and the cost to the taxpayers will be significantly reduced, because you have the bargaining power of the bid, where the police go in there and the cost is the cost.
Yeah.
Were you surprised to hear that their emergency manual hadn't been updated in 20 years? That kind of blew me away.
Well, no, Barry, and that's why I say that, and I say it all the time, when we rely on our government, there's not much they can do properly, and they should have been, for the amount of money they make, and for the amount of times that they say that, oh, yeah, we're doing our job and we're doing everything, there's cracks in everywhere, in every aspect of government. Now, having said that, I'm not really throwing stones. I'm just stating what I see as fact.
Right.
And that's all the more
Let me hold you there, my
reason to go
friend.
with a
I appreciate it very
private
much. So he is basically reiterating what the both of you said. Nobody's really to blame for all of this. It's just one of those things that just happened the way it had happened. But, 20 years, you would think that with everything that's gone on over the course of the last 20 years, that manual would have been updated and there would be regular drills. Has there been any commitment from the school committee to address all of that and take it in a...
Well, the schools have drills, so not to negate the work that's being done within the school. And I think that drill has evolved over the years from what I've heard from my children, So those are happening. They are happening regularly. We get notified when they occur. But I think that's kind of it. So there's a multifaceted issue when it comes to security within each individual school that just has been neglected and not been addressed.
All right, 508-996-0500. You next on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, Barry.
Whoops, I'm sorry. You're next. Go ahead.
Hi, Barry.
Hi.
I just got to make a comment. These people you have as guests, they're headed in the right direction. But speaking as a senior citizen on a fixed income, my taxes are high enough. The last caller made a good comment. if you're going to go with security, you got to go private. If you go into federal buildings now, they have private security, and these men are well trained, very well trained. They're all armed and everything.
That's beyond their purview, though. I mean, they have nothing to do with that aspect. They're just trying to push the government to get security. Do you support the idea? I mean, you said you're on a fixed income. You're tight. Tax money is tough to come by. Do you support the government finding the funds to hire security, whether it be private or not?
Oh, that would be terrific if the government would finance it. Then you could hire all the security you want.
Right, but I mean, you'd be willing to pay for that?
If it's federal, yes.
If it's federal money, comes from the federal government.
Yes.
All right.
And I was just pointing out, if you're going to go with security, you're better off not with the police, because the police, you know what they make, time and a half with unions and everything. You're better off going with private security if you're going to have private.
Well, security's going to cost you money. I mean, otherwise you're going to get Barney Fife with a bullet in his shirt pocket. You know, if you're going to have good security that's going to protect your kids, you got to have good security. It's going to cost you money. So
I think there would be a lack of cohesiveness as well if you bring an additional third party in. I think the chief has a very comprehensive view of the safety of our town. And I think that to add an additional third party into that would, you know, hinder communication in some way. Who'd be in charge of that? How are they going to communicate to the chief and the school? And I like the school. I like the chief. I like how he handles business in town. So I think it should be something that he manages. Before we go to a private security, I mean, I'd go to the sheriff's department before we went to private. But I think it should be handled by the town. But that's just my opinion.
All right, 508-996-0500. Got to take a break. Any other parents out there maybe listening in another town? These folks are from Somerset, but I'm sure many of the school committees are facing this same situation, whether you be in Freetown or whether you be in Lakeville or where else are you listening to me right now? Marion, Wareham, Mattapoisett, Fairhaven, Dartmouth, Acushnet. Anybody else out there feel as these women do, and you know, are hearing this and saying, wow, you know, we need to do this in our town too. We need to have this kind of discussion. Give us a call, 508-996-0500. We'll be right back after this. All right, welcome back to the program. Got a few minutes left, and we have a couple of guests in studio, Jess Machado and Jocelyn Dominguez, and they are parents of students in Somerset. And the reason they're in today is, well, I mean, you know, we've been talking for a couple of weeks now about the shooting down in Parkland and about the need for greater security at our schools. There has been quite a bit of discussion right here on this program about arming teachers, about hiring security to protect our schools, whether it be police or private security, whatever. Of course, there has been discussion too about new gun laws and new gun regulations, changing the age for which you can purchase a gun, all of the above, the usual things that take place after there has been a mass shooting. But what also usually takes place after there's been a mass shooting is that everybody's all worked up about it for about the first week or so, and then you get the kids on TV and they're crying, and you see, they're going to see President Trump, and they're on CNN, and everybody's all emotional, and how can we do this to our kids? Well, I don't get it. And then people forget.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we move on to the new flavor. And I'll tell you what, for 2 weeks, no matter how I tried to bring up a subject here, we always get back to guns, and we always go back to arming teachers, and the phones would be ablaze over this topic. If we were doing this last week instead of today, the phones would be ablaze right now. Yep. They really would. And but people, I think, they feel as though enough time's gone by, and maybe to some degree we're even becoming desensitized to this. But I'd love to ask you both, as parents, how your kids have reacted to all of this. Jocelyn, let me start with you. How old are your kids, first of all?
Let's see, my daughter is 6 years old.
6.
I tell you, Barry, I don't let her see anything on TV. I don't really discuss this with her. At her age, I just feel like maybe not yet with this. Of course, if she brings it up with me, of course I'm going to discuss it. But what do you say to a 6-year-old? How do you even explain the craziness that is in this world to a 6-year-old child? She doesn't get it.
Right. So, any sense at all that she's heard about it from anybody else?
No.
Nope. So
I asked her point blank and about, have you heard anything about a shooting? And she actually came up with a story that, something completely out of, so I just kind of left that alone.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about you, Jess? How old are your kids now?
I have a 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 11-year-old, and a 17-year-old.
So at least some of them have heard about this, right?
Correct. We limit it. I mean, we were at Kentucky Fried Chicken in town the day after the shooting, and I asked the manager to shut off the TV because it was on the news. So while we were eating there, I didn't want my kids to hear it. I would challenge any parent to tell us the story of them asking their child what they do during these drills. It is heartbreaking to hear that my daughter has to go to a specific place. She has to hide under a specific piece of furniture. My son has a job in his classroom. My son has a job in his classroom, something he has to do to help keep them safe in the event of a shooting situation. It's heartbreaking. It's our reality, and I get it.
It is.
But having a little kid have to tell you what they need to do when they're in that situation is really hard for a parent. There's a very real feeling that comes along when you envision them doing that. I always wish I could be in the school watching it.
Was there a psychological thing? My kids are both out of school and have been out for a while, but I can remember my youngest telling me, he's 22 now, I can remember him telling me when he was in grade school about how the kids would all be, at that point, just kind of like, shuttled into a closet. And he said kids would actually be crying, petrified, scared, crying.
Yes. Well, my daughter, who's 8, she cries just talking about it. It's terrible. And that's when I say, what can we do just a little bit more? Do they have a chance if we have somebody else out front? If we have a Marine out front, they have a chance. If we have a cop out front, they have a little bit of a chance. That's the reality. My kids get on a bus every day. I stand on the top of my porch. I say goodbye. I love you. I have a great day. And I go, okay, good luck. You know what I mean? That's what I think. That's
our sad reality.
Your oldest one then goes to the high school, Somerset, the regional high school out there right now. I understand there was actually a walkout there last week.
There was.
And it was organized by some school officials, and the parents didn't even know what was happening.
I think what had happened, and I only know what I know, is there was some talk about students organizing this on their own. So I believe when the principal and the staff got involved, which, by the way, the staff didn't know, so there were teachers that were unaware. So it was just a small portion of the administration that knew. I think what their plan was to deter the students from doing the walkout. It would be a safer situation. It would be a little bit more controlled. I think that was the mentality behind it. But me personally, I don't think it would have been even remotely right to encourage my daughter to participate in that. There was some talk about guns and safety and having our politicians listen to us, whatever. I don't want my daughter involved in that. Our viewpoints on that are totally different. So I didn't think that was the the news media was there. So, you know, we could call news,
Yeah,
but
the
we
news
couldn't
media,
call parents.
Sure,
Yeah,
the
the
news media
parents
was
didn't know,
notified
but the
about
news
this, but the
did.
parent, yeah. 508-996-0500. You're up next on WBSM. Go ahead.
Hey, Barry, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you, sir?
I'm all right. Hi, ladies. I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all the work you guys are doing, and
Thank you.
it's really good. I am pro teachers carrying guns. But here's the thing about it that nobody really talks about. Now, if a teacher's going to carry a gun, I don't necessarily want them to go out in the hallways and try to track down anybody that's trying to do harm. I want them to stay in the room, close the door, shelter in place, and if somebody comes through the door that ain't supposed to be there and they, you know, intend to do harm, I want them to be able to defend the kids in the room and themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want them out in the hallways trying to find the guy.
Right.
Right.
That's not their job.
No.
Right. And
You know
I'm
what
not
I
sure
mean?
that's what's intended either.
You should be able to defend yourself.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think that's the point of it, though, caller. I think the point is to have the teachers who are armed do exactly as you say, defend their area. Maybe they'd have an area of 2 or 3 classrooms or whatever, and defend that area. Should there be some kind of problem that breaks out in that area? But I agree with you
Shelter in
100%.
place,
And I don't
flip
think
the
anybody
desk
really
upside
wants
down.
vigilante teachers wandering around with guns anyway. Let me take the last break. We'll be back with some closing thoughts right after this. Stay with us. All right, we are back. We are back. And we're still back, and it's 12:56 in the afternoon on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon. Jess Machado and Jocelyn Domingos have been my guests from Somerset, 2 parents who are very concerned about safety at their schools as a result of the mass shootings that have occurred over the course of the years. But both say this one was a little bit different, and it brought the thought process away from the debate about gun control to how do we protect our schools and how do we secure our schools. They went to a school committee meeting in town last week and found out that there really is no plan, literally no plan for addressing the new issue of school security. Jess, you talked about in a letter that you wrote about unsecured doors, point of entry concerns, a 20-year-old emergency manual, and more. And people just seem to accept that there was some kind of security plan that was going to protect everybody, and now you're realizing there really is not. No. And that's going to be horrifying.
Yeah, and if it weren't for that teacher bringing up those specific things, I'm not sure we as parents would even know that.
We would have never known.
You know, our overall concern was about, you know, protecting the students with guns. So whether it was with teachers or with police, but you know, the information provided by the teachers that were at this meeting was very eye-opening as well. So yeah, scary, very, very scary. You know, teachers mentioning that, you know, I talked about this when I was, you know, with my parent group and saying, you know, these teachers can't lock their doors from the inside. So at a bare minimum, if there's an active shooter situation in the school, they can't lock their door from the inside. So they've come up with this way where they lock their door from the outside with a key around their neck at all times, and they've adhered Jenga blocks, little wooden blocks, to the door jambs, so that if they close the door throughout the day, the door doesn't close and lock them out. But in the event of an active shooter or a situation where they need to shelter in place, they have to knock the Jenga block away, and then the door would lock. To me, that is the most rudimentary, simplistic form of security. And at the end of the day, my kid is being protected by like a 2-cent piece of wood, which how effective is that? You know, those types of security issues have been brought to the administration's attention, you know, per these teachers, and have not been addressed. And there's no funding. There's never money to fix these things.
But 6 budgets have gone by. One problem each budget could have been taken care of.
You know, we're talking about what they do and the drills that these kids do. We're under the guise that when they do that, the doors are at the very least locked. You know, do we even have that basic protection for these kids?
I think what's going to happen is groups like yours have got to get together with groups from other communities in southeastern Massachusetts and really fight for legislation up on Beacon Hill. And, you know, if anybody else out there wants to reach one of you, how can they get in touch with you? Is there a way of Facebook?
Jocelyn and I are both on Facebook. Okay. We actually are in the process of starting a parent group Facebook where we can invite parents to join so they can get information on where we're going. So
all right, let me know when you get that information.
Sure.
All right, great. Thanks for coming in, Jess and Jocelyn.
Thanks, Barry.
Appreciate it. Good luck. Keep up the good fight. We need people like you out there. This is what it's all about, right?
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a break for the news. We're going to come back. We'll get your reaction to what you just heard, some other things to talk about today as well. So stay with us. You're listening to 1420 WBSM.
So how much snow we getting tomorrow?